Songwriter and music producer Harvey Mason Jr. has worked with some of the biggest stars of our time, from artists like Beyonce and Elton John to Whitney Houston and Justin Bieber. In his current role as CEO of the Recording Academy, he helps drive the conversation about AI in the music industry, like deciding what qualifies for the Grammys. I'm Jennifer Strong, and this is Shift.
Now here on the steering column is a device called Auto Cruise. You simply set the speed you want.
Self-driving robo-taxis are already on the road in 2 U.S. cities.
As the disc rotates, a mirror reflects the light in the way that depends on how the signal was recorded.
This is the 100 terabyte empty. I present to you Electro, the Moto Man.
Ladies and gentlemen.
I would say that one of my greatest skills is my ability to interact with humans.
This episode, the head of the Grammys joins us to talk about AI in the music industry.
I'm Harvey Mason Jr., songwriter and producer and CEO of the Recording Academy.
One of the things you're known for is shaping some real changes at the Grammys to deal with AI-assisted music. Can you talk about that process and also what you decided to do?
There's a lot of things happening around AI, obviously, and the Academy is most concerned with how AI is affecting creativity and specifically the human portion of creativity. So we're fighting for the rights of music creators, human music creators, in the way of legislation on state, local, federal, international level. All those efforts are ongoing. And then just making sure in our awards process and how we're considering AI as a part of the creative process, we're coming up with the rules and guidelines as to how AI can be eligible or not eligible for a Grammy submission or consideration. So a lot of different levels happening on copyright, artist likeness, name, image likeness, work that's being done. But it's an intense time right now as it relates to AI and creativity.
There's a lot of hype everywhere with AI, but I think especially around AI and music, as well as a lot of fear. How are you feeling about the state of things?
I generally feel optimistic, but that's just me as a person. But I think there's a lot of uncertainty and insecurity around what the future brings for people like me, people like our members, people that create art. Because right now there's just not enough regulation or understanding of the rules of engagement. What is AI going to be allowed to do? How is it going to be considered from a copyright standpoint, from a monetization standpoint, from an ownership standpoint? And how is it going to potentially displace all the people that have done so much work to become great craftspeople, songwriting or lyric writing or singing or production? So optimism is followed by fear and concern, but the optimistic side of me says there's so much potential. There's the ability to create new and different things that we never imagined before. As creators, we're all very resilient. We're very adaptable. And we always are early adopters of technology and change. And we like to use that for our benefit to create. So I don't think this will be any different, provided that we can get the right guidelines in place, the right understandings, and it's an equitable system that ensures the safety and the ability for human creators to make a living and continue to make their art.
Yeah, to your point, in a lot of ways, this isn't exactly new, right? Artists have been adapting to new tech for a very long time.
We always do. Every time something new comes out, somebody figured out how to carve a hole in a stick and blow through it and, make music through that. We figured out how to use that. We figured out how to get through sampling, through streaming, through Pro Tools, through Auto-Tune, through, all the different ways that music making has changed. We've figured ways to implement it and integrate it into our process. I'm absolutely certain we're going to be able to do it again. It's just what are the regulations around it? And what is the expectation, what is going to be done to make sure that it's fair and humans are protected.
Yeah. Well, what are the regulations? What do you think they should be in order to help protect creators in the process?
Well, for us, and I believe most people that are deep in the weeds of trying to sort out legislation, it really falls into three buckets. It's the crediting. How is new AI works being credited, or how are artists that are being represented through AI works being credited? It's remuneration. How are people being paid? Whether that's using someone's likeness or voice to create a new work, how are they being paid? Or if there's a generative work being made based off learnings from another copyrighted work, how are those people being paid? And then the third bucket is approvals. Who's approving what's being trained on? Who's approving what's legally allowed to be done with someone's voice? So for us, it's making sure those things, and there are other facets of it, more nuanced than that, but just trying to simplify it. Those are three of the most important buckets that we see that need to be sorted out for AI to play a fair and equitable role in creative process.
True beyond music, true for all of us, I would say, in journalism. We are feeling all three of those buckets too.
Yeah.
Uh, so, how's it going, I would say? And have there been any highlights with the various legislative processes that you've been involved with?
Yeah, there's been some real highlights. Tennessee has passed what was called the Elvis Act, and the governor signed that into law earlier this year. So that's a huge step forward. That's really the first state to make sure there are certain protections, making sure you're protecting the voice and the likeness and the lyrics of music creators. And then Illinois adopted something similar. The governor there signed that into law. There's other bills floating around at different stages of development in different states. There's something happening in California. Then on the federal level, we've been working really closely with the House to pass the No AI Fraud Act. We're gaining great support there. And then on the Senate side, No Fakes Act, with a couple of great sponsors there, making sure that, again, original creators can continue to protect their voice, their visual likeness from any kind of unauthorized use or creation without the things we talked about, the approval, the credit, the payment. So we're finding some good traction. Everybody's, I think, supportive around finding a solution and finding ways that we can use AI fairly and safely. It's just about what are the details? How do we get to that place? And making sure all the right people are at the table talking about that, negotiating.
Yeah. You've been one of the most active people with federal and state lawmakers trying to help lawmakers get their arms around this when it comes to creators. Do you have any takeaways or maybe some advice for others in adjacent fields trying to do the same thing?
That's a really good question. I don't know if I'm in a position to give advice because I don't know that we've completely figured it all the way out, but thank you for the compliment. We definitely put in a lot of hard work, and I would say we spent a lot of time learning and listening to our members, listening to all the stakeholders who have a hand in this and who this might affect, understanding the real issues. So I would say that's a big component, providing a wide space, a big table for people to sit at and really getting the ins and outs, the nuance of what the issues are. And then just a lot of persistence, really not allowing this to be sidetracked, knowing how important it is, knowing that the lifeblood of our industry and music and the creativity is making sure that everyone can make a living. Otherwise, we don't have people writing songs. We don't have artists singing songs. We don't have people producing music. So just understanding the problem, giving a lot of sleep, a lot of information, do a lot of learning and being extremely persistent and building the relationships and the support on the legislative level to make sure that these things can get moved forward.
Probably one of my biggest fears for my own field is that we're not going to have young people coming up wanting to do this job because it doesn't seem like it's a job that's possible to have and, earn a living or have a life. What do you say to people who are, expressing these fears? Do you have maybe any advice for folks trying to figure out whether it's still worth it to get into some of these creative fields?
It's always worth it to get into a field that you're passionate about and that you love. Creativity is always going to be a part of our society. In fact, I would go so far as to say creativity is going to be even more important as AI becomes more prevalent. Creativity and the ability to think differently, to bring the human perspective, whether that's journalism, whether that's music, whether that's photography, art. Creativity trumps all. Human creativity cannot be taught. I'm really, really passionate about that. Maybe I'm crazy, and some computer scientists probably would tell me there's no way computers are going to catch everything you can catch. They're going to be able to do everything you can do. But I think hopefully as you do that we're adaptable, we learn, we evolve. Also, humans, we're different. We like change. We like uncertainty. We like mistakes. We like spontaneity. Computers hate that stuff. They want algorithms. They want regular systems. They want exact process. Most of the greatest stuff that I created, most of the best songs I ever wrote or records that I ever produced had chance encounters in them or things that happened that were totally out of left field that I never expected or mistakes, things like that. And we as humans use that and use our experiences and use our interpersonal relationships to create music or to create writing or to be journalists or to be singers. And that can't be replaced. So I would encourage people to follow their dreams. The other thing I would encourage people to do is figure out the AI component of it all, because it's not going to go anywhere and you're not going to be able to be creative and be competitive if you're not considering how AI is going to fall into that process. So we spend a lot of time learning about what AI can do, learning how to implement it into our creative process and understanding it, but still all the while bringing in the human element to it.
Yeah, well, people listening can't see me smiling, but I am because I agree with you completely on all of that. What's your greatest challenge right now?
Greatest challenge is exactly what this whole conversation is about. It's trying to make sure that creators are protected, creators have a space that they can continue to derive a fair income from their work, and that there's regulations, laws, legislation, protections in place. So it's not the ambiguity that we're facing right now, the uncertainty about copyright ownership or monetization of new created materials. There's so much that needs to be done around that. That's a huge challenge as far as our legislative efforts. Obviously, there's other challenges in music industry and streaming and fair pay and continuing to be the service organization and do the work that the academy does. That's always a concern. We're coming up on Grammy season, so making sure that we're honoring music accurately and reflectively in a way that music is being made and it has different people doing different genres, things are blending and coming together, making sure we're adapting to that. So you asked the question of our biggest challenge. We have a lot of challenges, but we're excited and we're trying to approach them with positivity and head on, because we know how important music is. We know how important music people are to to the world and to society. So it's a big goal for what we're trying to accomplish at the Academy on many fronts, and the challenges more than problems, I'll say.
So, what's next with this work? What's next for you?
Continuing on the state level, pushing forward hard on the federal level for legislation, rallying more support, more co-sponsors. We have our Music Advocacy Day coming up here, where we have thousands of music creators all across the country meeting with their state and federal lawmakers. We meet with them in studios, we meet with them in coffee shops, we go to their offices and we talk about the challenges, and AI will be a big part of that day. So that will be what's next. And then again, we have Grammys on the Hill, where we all descend on Capitol Hill, have events, have listening sessions, show up at offices, and really rally support for the legislation that we're pushing in any given year. Obviously, this year, AI is going to be a big part of that.
Yeah, no doubt. I like to ask this next question because I always learn something. Has anything surprised you with this work you're doing?
It's usually something surprises me every day, but that's what I love about the work. I'm surprised at how little we all know about how we're going to solve this solution. We were talking to some of the best and brightest leaders in the country when we go to DC, and we know that there's something that needs to be addressed, but no one really seems to have a handle on how to do it. And that goes for me too. I'm not putting myself above anybody. And none of us have the exact fix. So that's surprising that with all the knowledge and wisdom that we have in our leadership and politicians that we're working with. But what also surprised me at the same time was everyone's willingness to find a fix. And that's the most pleasant surprise. You would go in offices with different people on either side of the aisle. It's a bipartisan issue that all people agree it needs to be addressed. And that surprised me. I thought we were going to find some people like, well, you guys are on your own. No one's saying that. Everybody's saying, yes, this is something we have to address. This is something that we feel could potentially get out of control and be unfair to the creative community. And we are united and aligned in finding a solution. So that's something that surprised me. And it was a nice surprise.
All right. Thank you so much.
Great. It was very nice to talk to you about all this.
This episode was produced by me and Emma Silikans and mixed by Garrett Lang, with original music from him and Jacob Gorski. Thanks for listening. I'm Jennifer Strong.
From PRX.